according to the time?
No,
She
ma'am,
was on.
she exceeded the time by around 2 or 3 minutes.
Oh, so you're going to give a warning, right? Like at 10 minutes, that it's 10 minutes and then we have 2 minutes left, so that the presenter knows that, they have 2 minutes left and can stop in another 2 minutes. That would be nice, I think.
Okay, ma'am. Then should I just speak over the mic or should I just
Yeah,
text?
I mean, yeah, you can speak. I mean, it's okay. We are all like
Okay, ma'am.
free and frank in this forum. I mean, it's okay. We can just not that formal, right? So, you can give them a warning at 8 minutes that 2 minutes is left. Otherwise, we might exceed. And I also wanted to ask whether the participants will have time to respond a bit to the comments that I'm making, or they
Yes,
will
ma'am.
have at the end. Okay,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
that's great. So, Disha, thank you for the presentation. So you're trying to link up, from what I've read, your abstract and your presentation. You're trying to link up three very broad areas. Okay, so on the one hand, you're keeping energy. On the other hand, you're keeping climate change, and on the other hand you're keeping geopolitical competition, and you're trying to link these three up and suggest in the end pathways. Okay, so I have a feeling that the area is very broad. You need to narrow down a bit, I guess. Okay, if you could narrow it down, because I mean, you highlighted the rivalries in the energy domain that the world is seeing right now. You highlighted how climate change is, they're rampant everywhere, and it's looking at the vulnerabilities also. Okay, and then you talked about geopolitical competition, and in this you talked about territorial also, climate also, energy also. So it's kind of the domain that you've highlighted is very broad, and in order to say something new or add to the literature, I think you need to narrow down the scope of your research paper a bit and focus on only one area, so that you can say something, fill in some gap in the literature, or say something new. Okay, even your this thing, your the suggestions that you're making with regard to how this problem can be solved, huge problem that you're outlining can be solved. You talked about how we need to reduce dependence on fossil fuels, strengthen climate governance, revitalize multilateralism, look at more CBMs to reduce resource conflict. So I would suggest to a little bit, you can focus on one of this and look at one particular area instead of the whole thing, because if you look at the whole thing, then it's very difficult to add to the literature, Disha. So that would be my suggestion if you want to take it up. So we go ahead with Sarbotrik now, Shibangini.
Yes, ma'am. We are supposed to go with Sarbotrik. If you're ready,
Yes, ma'am, I am ready.
yeah, sure. Then please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sarbotrik Banerjee, a second year student of political science at Ramakrishna Mission Residential College, Narendrapur, Autonomous. It is an honor to speak before you today on the theme of ecological salvation or colonial continuity, green colonialism, and the political economy of renewable energy. At its core, this presentation asks a very simple but urgent question. As the world embraces the renewable energy, are we truly moving towards a just and sustainable future, or are we simply repackaging colonial patterns of extraction under a green mask? This is what I will explore with you this evening. We live at a moment of planetary urgency. The climate crisis is no longer a distant threat, but an unfolding reality, compelling us to rapidly decarbonize in order to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. To achieve this, global north often promotes a narrative of green revolution. We are told that renewables, solar, wind, hydro, and electric mobility represent a clean break from the fossil fuels. This narrative is deeply powerful. It has inspired optimism and large-scale investment. But beneath this optimism lies a stark reality. Lithium, cobalt, magnesium, must be mined at unprecedented scales. And where are these minerals found? Primarily in the global south. Thus, what looks like ecological salvation for the North often rests on ecological sacrifice in the South. This is the problem I want to unpack tonight. To understand this, we must revisit the concept of green colonialism. Green colonialism refers to the ways in which the burdens of energy transitions are often unevenly distributed across the globe. The global north provides the capital, technology, and infrastructure. The global south, on the other hand, provides the raw materials while bearing the brunt of the ecological damage, displacement, and labor exploitation. This dynamic is not new. It's a continuation of patterns established under colonialism, where land, labor, and resources from the south were systematically extracted to sustain northern prosperity. As argued by Roy Munro Marini, prosperity at the core rests upon the underdevelopment of the north. By
Shubhangini,
disposition. David Harvey's
Sarbotrik,
concept
hello.
highlights how capital. Yes, yes,
Hello,
yes.
Sarbotrik, you're getting cut in the middle. I don't know whether the cut is only for me or it's for the rest of the people
No,
also.
ma'am, I think so. That is happening for myself as well. I was
Yeah,
thinking
so
Oh,
it's network
he's
sorry.
issue.
yeah, he's
So can
getting
you tell me where I
disconnected.
was from
Two
where I
times
was cut
you
off
got,
again?
yeah, two times actually. We missed your lines. Okay, just
Sorry,
continue.
ma'am.
I
Sorry,
mean,
ma'am.
okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Accumulation by dispersion. David Harvey's concept highlights how capitalist accumulation proceeds by dispossessing communities of land, commons, and livelihoods. When applied to renewable energy, these theories reveal a troubling picture. Even as we move away from fossil fuels, we may be reproducing the same unequal structures of extraction and dependency. This is why the phrase ecological salvation or colonial continuity is not rhetorical. It captures the heart of the dilemma. Let me illustrate this with a case study. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. The DRC is home to 70 to 80% of the world's cobalt reserves. Cobalt is indispensable for lithium-ion batteries, which power everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. Yet despite this mineral wealth, estimated at over $24 trillion, the DRC remains among the world's poorest nations. Chinese companies, through agreements such as Sycomines and subsequent acquisitions, now dominate around 80% of cobalt extraction and processing. At the local level, artisanal miners from a vast labor force. They work in extremely unsafe tunnels, often without protective gear. Toxic pressure is common. Collapses claim lives every year. For many communities, mining has meant displacement, polluted water, and the collapse of traditional livelihoods. The image you see, the image you see here shows artisanal miners working with minimal safety measures, a stark reminder of the human cost of the green transition. Alongside the artisanal mining, vast projects controlled by foreign corporations demonstrate the massive scale of extraction and processing. These projects, controlled by foreign corporations, demonstrate the massive scale of extraction and the corporate dominance of global cobalt supply chains. Yet, whether artisanal or industrial, the outcome is the same. Profits flow upward while Congolese communities remain impoverished. This is the colonial logic of extraction persisting into the renewable age. Scholars describe such regions as sacrifice zones. Children are drawn into artisanal mining, is exposed to toxic dust and physical dangers. Studies show unsafe levels of cobalt extraction and processing harm not just laborers but entire ecosystems. Mining towns remain poverty stricken and violent, despite sitting atop some of the world's most valuable mineral reserves. And yet, the cobalt from these towns powers electric vehicles, transports goods, and supplies infrastructure in Europe and North America. The contradiction is clear. Ecological salvation for the North rests upon the sacrifice in the South. It is important to note that artisanal mining is not marginal. Hundreds of thousands of Congolese people depend on it for survival. This demonstrates the dependency trap. Extraction is destructive, yet communities cannot escape it because it is their only livelihood. Harvey's concept of accumulation by disposition is embodied here. People lose land and health, while profits accumulate elsewhere. Thus, extraction is both exploitative and self-reinforcing. The story of extraction is not just economic, it is geopolitical. China now dominates both cobalt extraction and lithium processing. Russia has invested heavily in Bolivian lithium. Meanwhile, the US and EU criticize Chinese practices even as they compete for access. This has transformed renewable minerals into strategic resources, making supply chains into battlegrounds of influence. Multipolar rhetoric The DRC and Bolivia remain sites of extraction. The North remains the site of consumption and technological control. Green colonialism, therefore, is not abolished by a multipolar rivalry. It is simply reorganized. To conclude, the energy transition is not a smooth or a linear path to sustainability. It is a contested tale where the climate urgency is real, but so are the dangers of reproducing colonial logics. For the global north, renewables may represent ecological salvation, but for the global south, they too often represent the desperation and sacrifice zones. A truly just transition must involve structural changes, equitable trade agreements so reproducing countries capture real value, technology transfer so to reduce dependency, climate finance directed toward justice and ecological restoration, and above all, community participation and FPIC, free, prior, and informed consent. Without this, the renewable revolution risks being nothing more than a greenwashed continuation of colonial exploitation. So we must ask, will the energy transition deliver genuine ecological salvation or will it perpetuate colonial continuity under a green mask? The answer depends on how we structure global trade, technology, and justice so that renewables become sustainable and equitable solutions rather than temporary solutions.
Shubhangini, can you hear him?
I think he has finished with his presentation.
Acha, is he there? Still with us?
Sarbotrik?
Yes, ma'am, I am here.
Okay, we missed the last part. We could not hear you. Okay, so nonetheless, Bodrik, thank you for that very interesting take on climate and ecology and extraction and the concept of green colonialism. So your paper, your presentation focuses on the overall structures of exploitation, right? The global structures of exploitation through the prism you said of dependency theory in the context of resource extraction for renewable energy. And the case study that you have picked up for this is Bolivia and DRC. Now, I want to say that if what you've outlined, the concept of green colonialism, and these two case studies are already there in the literature with regard to green colonialism. They have already been highlighted, and the articles also are already on these two case studies, right? What you could add in your paper is whether there are theoretically also, but that would be difficult, but nonetheless, theoretically also, if there are any alternative structures to replace the one that is going on, like so are there, if that could be briefly, like at least outlined or briefly given a hint key, what could be the alternative, and in this laying out the alternative, if you could highlight any cases where this resource extraction has been done in a positive manner, where the local community has also benefited. Okay, I think that would be a great addition to the literature. Like if there are any areas in India or elsewhere where the resource extraction for renewable energy has been done in a positive manner, where where the local people have also benefited. If there is, if you could add that as an alternative to what is happening right now, that would be a great addition to the literature, I guess, Abotrik. But overall, thank you for the presentation. Very nice presentation. Although we missed parts of it due to the network.
Fine, ma'am. And thank you for your input.
Up next, we have Grisha Shridhar Poojary from the University of Mumbai presenting a paper titled Geopolitics of China's Climate Strategies, a case study of Oceania.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all see my PPT?
Not yet, I'm afraid.
Okay. Is it now visible?
I'm not being able to see. If Professor Fareedi can see, I'm not sure.
No, we cannot see it.
If it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
possible
Uh,
to show the PPT now, you can continue with your paper.
uh, uh, Now is it visible, ma'am?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
it's visible.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Grisha Shridhar Poojary. I am MA Politics student from Department of Civics and Politics, University of Mumbai. Today, I'm going to present my research topic, that is geopolitics of China's climate strategies, a case study of Oceania. So let's begin. Introduction. The definition which I have first portrayed is climate change, and second is of geopolitics. These two definitions significantly emphasize on that climate change is a long-term change in the average weather patterns that define Earth's local, regional, and global politics from NASA 2024. That means it's a very scientific phenomena which we are taking as in consideration. Second is the geopolitics is the study of how geography and economics influence politics and the relations between the nation, which talks about how it is connected to social sciences and humanities. For example, international relations. So is that two phenomena can be taken into consideration, and can we do it as an interdisciplinary approach? Then yes, in real life situation, there is a classic example of Oceania. Oceania region will be discussed in few minutes. The region actually emphasize on the impact of geopolitics of climate change due to its existential crisis and geostrategic location. Why is it so? Existential crisis is that Oceania region is specifically facing the vulnerable situation of climatic condition in that region, and geostrategic location because the maritime route is in the strategic location, and not only that, it has a national abundance of natural resources. So now why we are studying China's climate strategy? Because China plays an important role in this region by influencing this region, introducing the concept of climate diplomacy in the post-COVID era. This is the map of the region. The above one is the Micronesia region. Second is Melanesia. Then near Australia there is Australasia and Polynesia. There are actually four subdivisions of this region, and this all together, the islands within it is known to be an Oceania region. That means it is located in the Pacific region, Pacific Ocean of the region. So let's go to the research question. Now we got to know what is Oceania and why we are going into this study. But can we make it out a research paper, or can we study it? Yes, by bringing about research question that how do China's climate strategy in Oceania shape the intersection of energy security, sustainable politics, and geopolitical influence in the region. So the research objective would be that analyze the impact of China climate change in Oceania. That means we should analyze the region first in terms of climate change that is happening in that region. Second is that examine China's climate strategies, especially through renewable energy transition and climate infrastructure development in Pacific Island countries. We can take into consideration renewable energy transition as an important source because it can be noted that China has did heavy investment recently in 2024, about 70% renewable aid for Tonga's country for wind power installation, and because of that the reason renewable energy is somewhat influenced by China through their Green Belt and Road Initiative. Then, is there anything that China would like to go upon? Is that China is actually targeting, or I would say, China is challenging the global and regional stakeholder of this region of Oceania region by intervening with its regional politics. So the responses of them is necessary to be recorded so that we can understand what are the dynamics that is going on in the region through the geopolitical lens, going to theoretical framework and literature gap. So the research will be grounded in the neo-realism theoretical framework because all the states are, after all, competing itself to influence their state's interest in the anarchist system. And this China's climate strategy in Oceania is a great example of it by using the geopolitical as a tool. Existing literature overlooks this interdisciplinary approach, especially in terms of energy transition and politics of sustainability in this region. And they have only analyzed the China's grand strategy and Oceania climate crisis as separate studies. So is that we have to go about, then how we can go it? So research methodology, that is case study method. Now I will analyze how China's climate strategy is influencing in the Oceania as in case study, that it can also lead to future prospect of other regions as well. Second, I will talk about mixed method research as energy transition talks about. In the data is quite frequent in that region. So quantitative and qualitative research is extremely important to understand. Boolean logic will help to get me relevant sources, and content and discourse analysis will try to enhance my research by understanding how the interpretation meaning of the languages is changed according to the context. Talking about research methodology in continuation, I would take secondary data sources, that is academic literature, newspaper article, official data documents, others, for example, social media posts. And then I would go to the key findings, that is my results would be based on assumption that China's climate diplomacy is not just an environmental aid, but a political strategy to influence the Oceania region. Not only that, it can also talk about how energy security has been utilized in the region. And this is been seen as in debt tap diplomacy by China towards Pacific Island countries, because Tonga is the one who had got 70% of renewable energy, but in an exchange of a loan that has been debt by the China. And because of that reason, China has been emerging as a global leader in the one part, and the debt trap diplomacy on the other part. And so China is actually challenging the traditional hegemon, especially the US, Australia, and Japan, which are near to the region. Talking about significance and contribution of my research paper would be academic contribution. First, intertwining these two, China's climate diplomacy and Oceania climate change in the research. Second is that addressing the literature gaps, that not only China's climate strategy as a political tool, but it also captures the...
If I may interject, you have 2 minutes left. Kindly wrap it.
Yes, and broader impact is that climate change is a new battleground of political rivalry. The conclusion is that when climate becomes the currency of influence and sovereignty is at stake, then the idea of sustainability is in vain. These are my references, and this additional sources I have been used in the PPT. Thank you.
Thank you, Grisha, for the very interesting presentation. So you did say that that you've written in the abstract also that China is kind of providing an alternative, right? China is providing an alternative. It is perceived, and it is an emerging global climate leader. But at the same time that you're also saying, okay, okay, so in this context, okay, would you ultimately say that China's involving in itself in this matter in the Oceania is in the positive domain or in the negative domain when you look at it in an overall manner? Okay, and so because you also talked about China's policy, debt trap policy, and you're talking about the other areas that it uses geopolitical, geoeconomic tactics to get its way in a negative manner. So, in the case of Oceania, would you say that it's positive or negative ultimately? Plus, if you could just focus or explain the theoretical lens you've written that you're using, that of new realism, to examine this. So in case if the your first answer is positive, then how is it that you're using new realism, the new realist theory, to explain this phenomenon? So thank you, Grisha, for that interesting presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. So yeah, I would like to answer
I think
your.
we are going to wait till the last presenter has finished, and then we'll take all the responses together.
Yeah, sure.
Then final presenters of this session are Abhipriya Ghosh and Navanitha Krishnan Vikartha from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, presenting their paper titled Tuvalu as a Case of Climate Injustice in Global Governance.
Good evening, ma'am. I am Navneeta Krishnan of St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. I am presenting on the topic Tuvalu, a case of climate injustice in global governance. I hope I'm audible and that my PowerPoint is visible.
Yes, it is. I think Miss Abhipriya's is off, by the way.
Uh, She'll be speaking after I finish speaking.
Okay.
Just a second. Okay, when I'm presenting in full screen, it's not becoming visible. Uh, yeah, so I'm not able to present this as slideshow. When I'm doing it as a slideshow, it's not becoming visible on the screen. So this image exemplifies the faith that Tuvalu has been consigned to. In 2021, before the Conference of Parties climate conference, Tuvalu's foreign minister Simon Kofe, uh, he recorded a pre-recorded statement while standing in knee-deep in seawater. The crux of the message was that Tuvalu is in risk of sinking due to rising sea levels, which is caused by climate change. This image became viral and received a lot of media attention and brought forth the fate that awaits Tuvalu. So, the introduction to our paper, Tuvalu highlights the deep injustices embedded in how global governance systems handle climate change. It is an island. Tuvalu is an island in the Pacific, and it faces serious existential threats like many other Pacific islands do, low-lying islands do, from rising sea levels. This paper examines Tuvalu as a case study of climate injustice. This is an overview of the issues that we'll be covering in our paper. Firstly, climate risk. Secondly, institutional frameworks. Thirdly, migration with sovereignty. And lastly, geopolitical power imbalances. So, firstly, what is the climate crisis in Tuvalu? Tuvalu is facing rising sea levels due to uh, global warming and melting polar ice caps. The graph to the right shows sea level rise at Tuvalu from 1950 to 2009. The World Bank has said that Pacific islands are facing, and the Pacific region is facing sea level rise, which is 2 to 3 times larger than global average of sea level rise. Now, this in turn faces the threat, rises the threat of sinking the Pacific island. There are threats that arise as a continuation of this threat of rising sea level. For example, due to saltwater incursion, there is a lack of fresh water, and also food insecurity because a lot of crops cannot grow because of saltwater incursion. Tuvalu has been forced to depend on imports to meet its food needs, which raises a lot of subsequent issues as well related to sovereignty, food security, price rises. If the nation depends on imports, price rises can affect its food security as well. The next section is about the inadequacies in institutional frameworks. We'll be examining mainly three agreements or three institutional frameworks. Firstly, the Paris Agreement signed in 2015. The main criticism that the Paris Agreement faces is that the targets which it has set is inadequate in order to set global warming to the 1.5 degrees Celsius. It has faced a criticism that the targets are quite inadequate. Secondly, Tuvalu also has raised this criticism that it should stricter emission targets should have been aimed for in the Paris Agreement. Secondly, it ignores historical responsibility. We all know that developed nations have benefited from using fossil fuels to develop themselves, and now, when it's the turn of developing countries to develop themselves, they are being asked to cut down on their use of fossil fuel. So, even though the responsibility for climate change is unequal, when it comes to climate action, all countries are being asked to take equal responsibility. Just unfair to smaller nations. For example, Tuvalu is aiming to shift to 100% renewable energy by 2030, while several larger nations still have not taken meaningful action in that regard. There's also the lacuna of climate financing. While climate financing was promised, most of it has come in the form of loans, conditional loans, which again threaten the sovereignty of, of many nations, not just Tuvalu, but Tuvalu as well. Now, secondly, the Kyoto Agreement has been described as institutional design failure by critics, and also since it was one of the earliest agreements with regard to since the UNFCCC was an early agreement, critics have said that it has set back in time solutions for climate change. We could have pursued more aggressive action for climate change instead of the Kyoto Agreement. Now, I hand it over to Abhipriya to speak about the rest of it.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Abhipriya. I'll be taking it up from here. Coming to the COP or the conferences of the parties, they have showcased structural failures. And central among these is their reliance on voluntary pledges rather than binding commitments. And the COP28 is one such example. Although it introduced language about transitioning away from fossil fuels, it avoided measures such as phase out deadlines and they left loopholes for fuels like natural gas. Also, financial commitments to vulnerable nations, particularly the loss and damage fund, they remain far below promises. Also, the vague language and underfunded adaptation measures has also led to the inability of the COP to deliver equitable action. Tuvalu has, however, played a proactive role in the COP. It has co-authored the Baku Communique alongside the small island developing states, and they called for transparent, inclusive outcomes and operational climate finance at the COP29. And additionally, Tuvalu was the first nation to call for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty at the COP27, and this shows their urgency for change beyond depending on mere funding. Next slide. This could you zoom in a bit? Okay. This zoom out a bit. This chart shows the steady rise in CO2 levels from about 315 ppm in 1960 and 415 ppm in 2020, and this is alongside major international climate accords. And the colors indicate CO2 concentrations over time, with the cooler blues in earlier decades shifting to deeper reds in recent years. And despite numerous global agreements and conferences, the CO2 levels have continued to increase. Next slide.
Kindly wrap up your presentation. It's 2 minutes left.
Okay. Coming to geopolitical power imbalances, when we examine climate negotiations, one theme is recurring, which is the persistence of geopolitical power imbalances. The Copenhagen Summit of 2009 is a telling example of this. Umar Abu Bakr argues that closed door negotiations between the United States and the BASIC countries, which is basically a coalition of Brazil, South Africa, China, and India, is sidelined many vulnerable states, which led to a non-binding accord and a deep frustration among the small island nations. Hence, these climate talks often become arenas of exclusion. And this situation is nowhere clearer than in US China relations. The scholar Alex Wong has observed that cooperation between these two largest emitters was essential for securing the Paris Agreement. But because of the strategic mistrust, climate action was framed at the site of competition rather than solidarity. Next slide. Second part of the problem of power imbalances is unequal responsibilities. The industrialized nations, they have historically contributed to greenhouse gas emissions, but the cost of these emissions, the cost of adaptation and mitigation because of these emissions are shifted to underdeveloped countries. And the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities was meant to address this, but this is not the case in practice. The chart on the screen clearly shows this historical responsibility gap. It shows the top greenhouse gas emitters since 1850, and it's measured in cumulative emissions up to 2023. The US alone has emitted 641 billion metric tons, and far more than any other. Could you go back to the chart? Uh, Far more than any other country. China is currently the largest annual emitter. They have a cumulative figure of 437 billion tons. The EU collectively accounted for 418 billion tons. And the result is that small island states like Tuvalu, who have negligible contributions here, suffer the costs of this, and they find their survival pushed to the margins. And it can be said that the climate regime is shaped less by urgency and justice and more by these asymmetries of power. And this problem is not just technical; it's also political. Next slide. Coming to the migration versus sovereignty debate.
What about the time, Shivangini?
Ma'am,
I just need 1 more minute. I'll wrap up.
Okay.
On the one hand, migration has become a pressing reality, and the 2023 Philippine Union with Australia grants Tuvaluans a special migration pathway through a climate visa, and it ensures that 280 citizens annually can relocate to Australia. This is basically like an example of the institutionalization of migration. And on the other hand, sovereignty remains central to Tuvalu's identity. The Philippine Union, they have been criticized for compromising their autonomy, particularly since Australia is granted a say in the security and Tuvalu's security and foreign policy decisions. And beyond this, Tuvalu's plans to become the first digital nation by preserving its culture, its land records, governance structures online. They have sparked debates over whether a state can exist without a physical territory, which is one of the major criteria for statehood. And public opinion also reflects strong resistance. Many Tuvaluans express reluctance to leave their homeland, and they see these migration and sovereignty trade-offs as threat to their identity rather than a solution to the crisis. Next slide. To conclude, Tuvalu's experience demonstrates the injustice in this climate crisis, and this issue is not just an environmental one, it's also a political and ethical one, where the capacity of vulnerable nations to secure their futures, they have been limited. And Tuvalu is not just a case study, it is also about a nation's fate, and it is about the credibility of commitment for the global commitment to equity and responsibility in the face of this climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhipriya and Navanithan, for that very, very beautiful, excellent presentation and paper on Tuvalu and climate injustice. What I would like to say is, if it would be better if in the paper, I think whatever you've outlined, the climate injustice part, with regard to how Tuvalu has not contributed to the climate change but is at the receiving end, and the picture that you showed in the beginning, reminded me of a picture from Maldives, if you all can recall, where they held that underwater conference to highlight how Maldives will also in a few decades go underwater. So kind of similar, but so the climate injustice part is already there a lot in the literature that is available. Your paper, I think, should majorly focus on, if possible, okay, the two other sections or the three other sections, could focus on the last part of your presentation, where you highlighted that, the migration part to Australia, how they've signed a deal, and if you could grapple with what kind of problems that could entail, or with regard to sovereignty, or the last part you also mentioned that how it is trying to bring up a digital nation, to try and save its culture and people, not people, but to try and save its culture and heritage and all of that. So if you could grapple with these two issues majorly, then I think, that would add to the literature, because the criticism part and how they've been at the receiving end of something that they are not part of, that has already been highlighted. So the last part, if that could be your main paper, and it would be great. I mean, this is the time of digital time, like if you could get in a survey or interviews from people of Tuvalu about how they feel about this digital nation. You did mention some survey that was done, where they did not want to move out of migrate,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, something like that. Or if you could connect with some colleges or the youth there and how they feel about this issue, or the digital, if you could look at their digital nation online and write something about it, I think that will be something new, instead of. So your paper can be more about this last part of your presentation, if you could, and delineate, explain, or grapple with the issue of sovereignty and migration, or the digital archiving, the digital nation virtual replica. That would be very, very interesting. But overall, I think I want to congratulate all the presenters for doing such a great job and very good presentations to all of you. And congratulations. And the only thing is that what I can notice from all the presenters is that the criticism part of the existing climate change, the climate change conferences or what is happening, that is already there. But what you all could do is add the alternative part, or give some beacon of hope or something, to add something new, because criticism is already there. But what new or what alternative can be there, or pick up some examples, that can be shown as a pathway. I think that is what is important also. But overall, congratulations to all of you.
I think we can take a few questions now. If anybody has any questions, you may ask it now.